In today's video, are you not building enough muscle because you're staying too lean?
All by myself.
Hey guys, what's going on? This is Parvella from ProPhysique.com, and today's video comes from my Instagram direct message. So if you're interested in health, fitness, building some muscle, looking good naked, well, hit the subscribe button because that's what we do here, and I love answering your questions. So I'll put my Instagram on the screen here. Send me your Instagram direct messages and we'll get to answering them. Now, for today's question, I want to read it so we can understand the context. If someone like myself likes to stay at a relative low body fat year-round, just enough to see the six-pack, am I taking a risk of slowing down or minimizing my gains, staying under 15% body fat around, even if I feel pretty great? I guess the question is, at certain body fat percentages, are you hurting your muscle gains, staying around a low body fat percentage, and how could we find that percentage for ourselves, if so? So I feel like there's a lot to this question. There's a lot of things that I want to address. So let's first start by saying this. Is there such a thing as being so low body fat that you inhibit your ability to build muscle? The answer to that question is undoubtedly yes. Now, let's talk about muscle physiology and what it takes to build muscle. We need an environment for muscle to grow that is very ideal. Now, I've done videos in the past where I've talked about how you can build muscle despite a calorie deficit and all kinds of negative things, but those are basically based around the fact that you haven't been training. Either you're very new to training, where it's pretty damn easy to build muscle, to be honest. If you've never really trained before, even if your diet's not great and your training program isn't that great, you're gonna be able to put on some muscle. Also, if you trained for years and then stopped, well, when you start training again, muscle memory. I've done the video on this and how it actually can change our DNA so that we are able to get back to our previous baseline of muscle very easily. So these are two periods where you can actually rapidly gain muscle, but those are extenuating circumstances. Now, if we're going to talk about a situation where someone's been training for a while, is there such a thing as being too lean to build muscle? And the answer comes down to two factors: hormones and strength and energy. Okay, so what does it take to build muscle? Well, we need a couple things to be happening. Okay, we need the stimulus. You need to be in the gym lifting weights, and you need to be either progressively overloading, adding some metabolic stress, or building up your volume over time. These are all the variables that we're kind of dealing with when it comes to building muscle, and you can make the case for any of them, but let's talk about the fact that you just need to be improving. You need to be consistently in the gym, and you need to be getting stronger over time. Now, generally speaking, you need to be in what I consider a caloric surplus, or at least a healthy caloric maintenance. What do I mean by caloric maintenance that's healthy? Well, you're eating enough food to sustain the lights in your body. You're keeping your lights on. You're able to kind of function on a daily basis. If you're not even able to function on a daily basis because your calories are so low, your training's going to suffer, and you're not going to be able to progress in the gym, lifting more weight over time. Therefore, you're not going to be building a lot of muscle. Now, hormonally speaking, we all know that testosterone is one of the big drivers of putting muscle on. So if you're in a caloric deficit, or if you're very low body fat, you're at a risk for suffering from low testosterone. This is a part of what happens in natural bodybuilding. We all reach a phase when we're dieting down for a natural bodybuilding show where we are not interested in sex. We are not interested in much other than food and, getting on stage shredded, okay? And those are the driving factors. So for your question, let's get to the specifics. You mentioned, is it okay to see abs year-round and build muscle? Absolutely. I think that a healthy body composition for us to be in involves seeing a little bit of abs. I mean, if you are so sloppy that you cannot see any kind of core definition, you can definitely afford to get a little bit leaner and still not risk the inability to put more muscle on. I think what we start to associate, at least I know I did this very young, was that if I wasn't bulking, and by bulking I mean freaking eating anything in sight and just constantly lifting heavy, that you're not adding muscle. Well, what I've learned over the years is that you don't really need to do that. You don't need to be so far over your body fat set point that you're at zero risk okay, that you're at no risk of ever. What you need to be doing is paying attention to training. You need to be paying attention to your diet and being consistent on a consistent basis, hitting your protein, hitting your numbers every single day. Okay, you don't need to be exact, but we don't need to see huge weight fluctuations. You don't need to put on 25 pounds of body fat to add 5 pounds of muscle. Building muscle is inherently a very slow process. It can take years and years to add even ounces or pounds of muscle. However, it's going to create a visual difference that's quite significant. However, body fat, we can add that instantaneously. So when you hear people make claims like, man, I added muscle so quick, I put on 7 pounds in 2 weeks. Probably a mixture of body water, body fat, and maybe a little bit of muscle, especially if they're new to lifting. But we don't see huge shifts in muscle tissue, okay? We see huge shifts in lean body mass, which gets lumped in with muscle, but lean body mass has a lot to do with water. How well you're hydrating your muscles can have a lot to do with what the scale says, okay? So yes, there are a lot of factors that go into building muscle, but just understanding that building muscle is a slow process, and the longer you do it, the slower it gets. But whenever I hear people say that, I think, yes, it gets slower, but it also gets more significant. The last pound of muscle that I've added to my body over the last couple of years is a lot more significant than the first 10 or 15, okay? The visual changes by adding muscle on top of the baseline of muscle that you build early on in your bodybuilding career has so much more significance. It might not be as impressive on the scale, but let me tell you, it's really going to matter in the long run when you get those advanced gains, advanced muscles, okay? So how do we find out what the body fat percentage is that we can maintain? Well, a lot of it comes down to experimentation. Now, as someone who's been competing in bodybuilding shows and coaching competitors for years, I tend to find that there are these thresholds where we feel great, we are really lean, but we push through to get on stage. So what I have found for myself, and I'll say this, I compete anywhere between 195 pounds or so on stage. I feel amazing around 210. Around 210 pounds, I think I'm probably around 10, 11%, maybe 9% body fat. I feel amazing. I look fantastic. Anyone that would see me like walking around at the beach would be like, wow, you're shredded. But I'm far from stage shredded, okay? That's a different animal altogether. I could maintain that fairly easily. I could feel great all the time. So if I could feel great all the time, why don't I do it? Well, it takes a little bit of work. And I prefer to walk around a little bit heavier. I don't like being 210 pounds. To me, that's very light. Now, I'm 6'3". So for me, I prefer to get up to 12 to 15% body fat and kind of maintain around here. And that's for me in the low 220s. That's where I feel most comfortable. That's where I still feel good in my clothes. I feel like I can actually fill out an XL shirt. And don't discount that. That's an important consideration for you. You know, if you feel good at 15% body fat, and then you diet down to 12 and you realize, man, my energy is suffering, my workouts are suffering. And if you find that you're not getting as good a sleep because you're hungry, that's where we run into some problems with muscle building. So it probably is gonna just take an experiment for you to diet down to lower body fat percentages and find that sweet spot for you where you look the best and feel the best. I will say this, there is a relationship between how lean you get and how much you have to focus on your diet and training and cardio to maintain that and to maintain your energy and to keep training quality high. If you're willing to hit your meals on a very inflexible pattern and follow these rules, then you can stay leaner easier. But if you want to put on a little bit more body fat, you can be a little bit more relaxed and still make great progress. So in my mind, it's all about what you're happiest with. Where is the place that you're happiest? If you would rather be a little bit leaner year round, but also be a little bit more regimented, tracking a little bit more diligently, then for you, it's not going to be that much of an issue. So finding that spot is going to be different for everybody. Now, we all do have different body fat set points, ranges where our body fat likes to be. I consider myself someone that stays rather lean rather easily. So what does that mean for me? That I have to focus on eating enough to put muscle on. And so this is where I've spent the bulk of my lifting career, is not being shredded. Because for me, I was always shredded growing up. I was very lean, but there was nothing to me. My nickname was the human coat hanger in high school. Thanks to my cousin Jason for that, by the way. All right, guys, that's gonna be it for me. Hopefully I answered your question, and I'll talk to you guys tomorrow.